And with that, thank you all for joining us. I would like to introduce Susan Gilliland, who will introduce our presenter tonight. Susan?
Okay, thanks, Ron. Well, it's my pleasure and honor to introduce Dr. Jon Feenstra. John was raised in the Appalachian Ridges of northwestern New Jersey, and he loved the out of doors. And in high school, a teacher took John and his class on a birding trip to southeastern Arizona. And though John was captivated by the birds, it was chemistry that drove his academic education. After graduating from college, he moved to New Jersey to Los Angeles to earn his doctorate in physical chemistry at Caltech. And while studying, he became very active in Southern California birding. He finished his PhD, his dissertation was on ultra-fast electron diffraction, but it wasn't long before John declared that birds were really his full-time passion. Today, John works as an ecologic consultant, and when we're not under COVID restriction, John travels the world with Wings birding tours. We're also very pleased to say that John serves on the Los Angeles Birders Board of Directors. So without further ado, please welcome Jon Feenstra.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. I hope you had some time to read the opening slide here, mostly for the poll information. Those of you on the live stream, I guess, won't be able to see the poll, but I'll walk everybody through it. I want to give a little introduction to this talk series as well: slashes, spuzz, and identification. Mostly this was hatched during an LA birder board discussion about eBird errors and some of the common problems that birders run into. Not particularly super advanced stuff, just kind of the regular run-of-the-mill problems. And it was it wasn't all that long ago when you would go out birding and go see some birds and maybe misidentify one of them and either forget about it on the way home, or you write it in your notebook or get a picture of it or something, and then forget all about it or talk about it later with some birder friends or something. But then along comes eBird, and now everybody's birding data and all your identifications and misidentifications are everything or everybody else's business and live on the internet forever. So to the eBird reviewers and pretty much everyone else using eBird, we can see what's what's out there. And if you call a Cassin's Kingbird a Western Kingbird, it's it's all a matter of record. So it's with citizen science platforms like eBird out there, handling all of this data, it's in everybody's best interest to identify what they can, and when you can't identify it, be okay with that. And there's always room for the slash. So moving along, let's see here. Okay, so some birder lingo out there. Mark and Ron usually cover this at the top of the show, but if you're a birder, what you think of when you think of slash isn't the guitarist for Guns N' Roses. It's a marker that we use it shows up in eBird, but also in just your checklists of a pair of birds for which the identification is not settled. Something along the lines of these are some common ones. I realize in retrospect I should have put up bells and sagebrush sparrows, since we're working on that here at LA Birders. But some of the common ones that we run into around here are long-billed and short-billed dowitchers, Rufus slash Allen's hummingbird, mitered slash red-masked parakeet, greater slash lesser scaup. Just pairs of species that sometimes can't be identified given the look that we have, or we're missing some field mark or characteristic. We didn't hear it call, we didn't see the right tail feather, it's in the wrong plumage, something like that. But when birders talk about a slash, that's what we're talking about. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a cool picture for any sort of for something called a spa, but we say something SP or something spa is just refers to species. So I just threw up a couple pictures of some common spurs that get used out there in birding. Jaeger spur, some species of Jaeger, Laris spur, some species of gull. I threw aquatic bird spur up there. There's some pelicans and cormorants and gulls and things, but just a mix of stuff. And if it was really, really far away, it just looked like a cloud of birds. And you could use spur to indicate that, well, you've got birds, but you just don't know what they are. And these are all little things that all notations that we use to keep things clear. And that brings us to tonight's Slashes, Spurs, and Identification webinar, which is that's tonight's yellow-bellied kingbirds. Let's see here, yeah. To take this from the top, what's a kingbird? Kingbird is a kind of flycatcher. They're members of the genus Tyrannus, which is in the family Tyrannidae, which is the New World flycatchers, the tyrant flycatchers, and there's 400 some odd species of them and in about 100 genera. Before the taxonomic reshuffling of a bunch of things into tanagers, it was the America's most diverse family. But still, a huge family with a lot of birds, with many of them with very little in common. There's insectivores and frugivores, and little ones and big ones, and skulky ones and prominent ones. But there's it's one of those birds that just about every ecological niche somewhere is filled by some kind of a flycatcher. Kingbirds fit in this in Tyrannus. They're large. They're tend to be prominent. They're aggressive. They're tyrants. They're king-like. They also are named after a subtle and hard to see coronal patch, a yellow to red colored feathers that are concealed in the crown. And sometimes if you get one on a windy day or something, you can see it, but otherwise it's pretty tough to see. Male and female kingbirds look the same, so I guess they could just as well be called queen birds. Males are a little longer winged and longer tailed, but for our field purposes, the males and females look the same. So flycatchers, some flycatchers anyway, pose some of the most notorious identification challenges among New World birds. The Empidnax flycatchers of North America and the Alanias of South America being some of the more well-known tough spots there. So, but kingbirds, we don't really think of too much of being a problem here. Like I said, they're pretty easy to see. You can get good looks at them. There usually aren't very many of them in any one place, but because they're easy to see and they're pretty common, and we see them around, just the odds of a misidentification or a trouble ID, though low, are multiplied by the large number of kingbirds that we encounter, the kingbirds that we have, there's 13 total members of Tyrannus, and there's seven kingbirds in North America: Eastern, Western, Cassins, tropical, couches, thick-billed, and gray. So those are our seven. And then in the further south in the tropics, the strictly tropical ones, loggerhead, giant, snowy-throated, and white-throated. And then fork-tailed flycatcher and scissor-tailed flycatcher are also members of Tyrannus. So okay, my slide's not going. Oh, there it goes. In California, 6 species of kingbirds have been recorded, and that's Eastern, Western, Cassins, tropical, thick-billed, and couches. And fork-tailed flycatcher and scissor-tailed flycatcher has also been both recorded in California. So that's 8 members of the Tyrannus genus that have all been recorded in this state. And of the 6 that are up there, 5 of them have yellow-bellied. So those are the ones that I'm gonna talk about here in this talk. So In the next 6 slides, I'm going to show pictures of quiz birds to test everybody out here, and the multiple choice answers are the ones that are on this slide right here. So if you're on the if you're not on the Zoom webinar and you can't see the poll, this is what the potential answers are. So I want to make sure I covered the species, some slashes, yellow-bellied kingbird spa. So that's that. And then I'm going to go through these 6 photos. I think we get 15 seconds with each of them. And then later in the talk, after I go over some identification stuff, I'll come back to the photos. So let's roll. So here is Kingbird number 1.
Okay, and here's the poll. Yeah, go ahead and check it off for us. Starting to get some answers in. Mark Shield actually was going to be singing the Jeopardy theme song, but I think he might have stepped out of the room.
Or lost his voice.
Ah, that could be. Okay, and a couple more seconds. And that is it. Looks like we're slowing down. Okay.
Good. Okay. Here
Next.
is Kingbird number 2.
And the poll is up. Go ahead and answer away, even if you're not sure. Well, you're not sure. We have slashes and spuzz. Now we're getting lots of good answers. Well, lots of answers at least. Okay, a few more seconds, and the poll is ending right about now. Thank you.
All right. Here's Kingbird number 3.
Okay, and here is the poll. Now this one is tough, John.
Well, wanted to see what was all going on out there in in internet land.
Absolutely. Okay, 3 more seconds. 2, 1, and poll is ending.
All right. Kingbird
Okay.
number 4.
Number 4, and the poll is up. Yeah, we're getting lots and lots of answers. All right. Even if you're not sure, take a guess. A logical guess. And poll ends in 3, 2, 1.
Right.
Okay.
Kingbird number 5.
And poll number 5 is up and running. Uh-oh, this is getting too high for my range. I should start the series lower. Yeah, I can't do that. Okay.
Jazz musician to play us something.
Yeah, we actually had some music. Poll is ending in 3, 2, 1, and end a poll.
All right. And Kingbird, the last one of these, and
number 6. Number 6. Okay. And the poll is up and running. Yeah, we actually had music. I recorded like all these different versions. We just couldn't figure out how to share it along with your sharing.
Oh, yeah.
I suppose I could play it into the microphone, but loses a lot, including fidelity. Okay, and the poll is closing 3, 2, 1, and We're done.
Okay, now I can't see how everybody answered yet, so I'll find out later. But first,
Yes.
head to the books. So here's a couple of field guide pages. When confronted with an unfamiliar bird or a bird you're trying to identify or something like that, we'll often get a look at something and then head for some reference material. And so I just photographed a couple of pages from some books around the house here. And there's the Kaufman Guide and National Geographic, and they basically have the same sort of stuff in it. Pictures of the different kingbirds, with little arrows or notes next to the relevant field marks. And but before I talk about this stuff, I want to talk about this page on the opposite. These are, where the range maps are. And when I'm thinking about identifying a bird, my Rolodex of bird characteristics in my head is sorted by when and where I am, which I know usually. And obviously that in the quiz thing, that was relying solely on plumage because I didn't put any dates or places in those things. But that works better online. The range maps, there's the colors in the range maps indicate whether something is a summer resident, winter. The purple color, I think on both field guides, indicates where places where the bird is resident. So it's and down there for thick-billed kingbird on the lower left, there's no map at all, just a little description about its restricted range in the U.S. But this is how you, before you even start looking at plumage, this is how you know that if you're in Pasadena in January and you see a yellow-bellied kingbird, chances are it's going to be a Cassin's kingbird, because that's the thing that's here in January. And this has been put into writing and in other places. 40th anniversary of the birds of Southern California. But so there's these abundance bar charts. In the vertical columns is month of the year, and you can look at this and see where what's common at what times of year. Interestingly, the distribution of Cassin's kingbird has changed in 40 years. I guess it used to be a much more scarce bird in the winter months and much more common in the summer. I guess as our urban forests have grown up and there's more little berries and things for them to eat. But you can see the really distinct seasonal distribution of something like Western kingbird, which is very rare, almost non-existent in the winter. And becomes very common in the middle of March through the summer in open country. And you can see a couple isolated dots for things like thick-billed kingbirds. You're dealing with something something pretty rare. So at the Birds of Southern California and the Lane Guide as a couple of references. So, but also this I just took from eBird, so we can actually compare the user inputted data of eBird with the wisdom of experts. And the basic information is it's the same, it's the same thing. These are abundance charts, showing, particularly something that has a really well-defined seasonal distribution, like Western kingbird when it becomes more numerous. Cassin's kingbird in this bar chart shows pretty much constant abundance through the year. There's a couple little dips around like June and August, September, and I wonder if that's just because fewer people are birding in the places where Cassin's kingbirds are, rather than there actually being less Cassin's kingbirds. But with eBird, you also get slashes and spuzz, which are all here, and as are the rare ones, like Couch's kingbird. There's only 2 records for the state of California. This bar chart is for the whole state, by the way. Couch's kingbird, there's only 2 records for the state, but lots of people saw them pretty much every day that those birds were there. So it has a well-defined solid line through from November through January, so it's. And similarly for tropical kingbird, which is a slightly more regular extraliminal vagrant, and thick-billed kingbird are represented here and show just how the relative scarcity of them. So also, eBird has some other nifty things. There's these generated abundance maps. This one's for Cassin's Kingbird, showing the darker color being more abundance, but also the seasonal range. You can see where in the eastern part of Cassin's Kingbird range is migratory, has a summer range in the southwestern United States. But where we are in Southern California and Los Angeles area, it's shown as purple because it has a year-round range there. And there's a like a core year-round range in central Mexico. Let me move on. There's some other neat media stuff here. So let me show you this. This is pretty cool. This is the change in seasonal abundance through the year. So you can see how Cassin's kingbirds are modeled to migrate in the eastern part of their range, coming up from central Mexico. I'll play that one more time while I'm still talking. But they're largely they're resident in Southern California, and just that distribution just doesn't change. So that's pretty cool. And similarly, what did I just do here? Western Kingbird. Western Kingbird's more dramatic because they have a extensive range in open country through the American West in the summer, but in the winter they have a significantly smaller, more restricted range in Central America, Western Mexico, down to the Central American countries, and a very well-defined seasonal migration. So I'm going to pull up the video for that one, which is pretty spectacular. So you can see them pulling out of their winter range and just blowing up all across the American West, and then all heading back down to the Pacific coast of Central America. I'm going to play it one more time. There's an interesting thing. This was something Ryan Terrell touched on in his talk. Was this was molt migration and how birds would stage up in northwest Mexico during the monsoon season in September. So when you see the bar get to September, there's a big concentration of Western kingbirds right where the monsoonal rains are drenching things in northwest Mexico. So that's kind of cool. And but anyway, that's Western kingbird. Oops, I just. All right, so to bring it more local, these are the maps from the LA County Breeding Bird Atlas. Cassin's kingbird on the left and Western kingbird on the right. And you can see from this that that Western kingbird is really a kingbird of wide open country, and a very widespread breeder in LA County, particularly in the Antelope Valley, which is full of big wide open places. Cassin's kingbird has a much more restricted range to woodlands and on the coastal slope. Although I figure that's probably it's different now because of the development of the Antelope Valley, places like Palmdale and Lancaster, with a lot of maturing trees and older neighborhoods. That there's probably more breeding Cassin's kingbirds in the Antelope Valley than there were in the 1990s. But the general theme still holds. So moving on to the sort of the extraliminal kingbirds in our area. This is the range map of tropical kingbird, which is very well named, with a huge range over South and Central America, and it really just comes up into South Texas and Southern Arizona into the U.S. But is really a tropical species. There are migratory subspecies and populations of tropical kingbird. So some seasonal movements, but in lots of places, these are just resident birds. They also are, and this is just I just pulled up a map of all cumulative tropical kingbird records in the United States. It is a rare extraliminal vagrant, particularly to the East Coast, but shows up regularly on the West Coast, including in California. But this is the where they have showed up, and it's a common bird in the tropics, and it their movements definitely throw them into some far flung places. I really like this Bermuda one way over there. So thick-billed kingbird is a bird of West Mexico. and just has, barely has to range up into southeastern Arizona. And yeah, and thick-billed kingbird records are pretty limited. They occur in southern Arizona. There are approximately 30 records for California, various others around the country. But even as a vagrant, they don't stray too far. Couch's kingbird is resident in eastern Mexico, which has a range into southern Texas, and they have a handful of records around the U.S. as well. You can see from those maps that I just showed you, the Couch's kingbird is largely, I wonder if I can back one up. Yeah, it's largely resident. So the purple, it's a year-round resident in the places where it lives. It's not very migratory. So being not very migratory and a range being further from California than the other yellow-bellied kingbirds, it's also the one with the fewest records in the state. So now that we've covered some of that stuff, let's get back to looking at birds and identifying by what they look like and not where you are and when you are. So here are the pictures again from the field guides. The field marks that are consistently emphasized in field guides and field identification of the yellow-bellied kingbirds is the heads and the tails. So let's move on and talk about that. So the Cassin's kingbird tail is different from the other yellow-bellied kingbirds in that it's a dark color that's roughly about the same shade as the wings, and it often has pale tips on it. And there's sometimes and in good light, some pale edging to the outer web of the outer tail feathers. And usually distinctive is a dark head and nape, kind of like a steely sort of plumbeous color that contrasts with especially with the white malar and the white chin. It's slightly larger build than Western kingbird, and it's a slightly larger bird on average, being about 10% heavier. I find that to be usually not terribly helpful, except in flight. If you're in the spring when you're watching Western kingbirds flying around in March, seeing a Cassin's kingbird go by, or if you're in an area with Cassin's kingbird, does kind of look like a bulkier bird. So on the next slide is kingbird number 1, which is a Cassin's kingbird. Ron, can you show the poll to see how people did? And so this kingbird, all right, decent. Some folks said Cassin, some folks said Western. So yeah, and a mix. I like that people used both the Cassin's Western / and the yellow-bellied kingbird spa. So yellow-bellied kingbird spa, hey, you go with that in this presentation, you'll never be wrong. But you can see there's a little bit in this bird here. There's shows a little bit of the white malar. The head's pretty washed out in this photo in pretty bright light, but you can see a contrast between the dark face and the white malar. But better to look at the tail in this one, where you can see a dark tail with pale tips. It does have a pale outer web to this outer tail feather, but the pale tips are very distinctive in this photo. So it's a good Cassin's kingbird. And next I will move on to, this was kingbird number 4, which was also a Cassin's kingbird. Let's see how people did on this one. This one was a little trickier because it's people did pretty good on this one, and a few slashes, a few spuzz. Okay, I like it. This one's a little trickier because the tail feathers are presumably kind of the tapered juvenile tail feathers, and they're all worn off at the tip, so you can't really see a pale tip on these feathers, but it does have a pale outer web, so it could be a little confusing with Western kingbird, which has quite a prominent outer web. But when I get to the Western kingbird photos, I'll do some comparisons, and you can see how different that is. But also has the pale chin and malar contrasting with a darker gray head. And then I have one more from the quiz show, which is another Cassin's Kingbird, Kingbird number 5. And this one, the tail is in shadow. People did pretty good on this one, but that bright white mailer contrasting with the dark head really jumps out on this bird, which is when seen and in good light and all of that. When you have the ideal conditions, that really that's a really good field mark. So those are the Cassin's Kingbirds that were in the photo quiz. So all right, I'm going to talk about Western Kingbirds. So like I said, differing from Cassin's Kingbird, actually different from all of the yellow-bellied Kingbirds in this presentation, are the Western Kingbird has a very black tail with very brightly contrasting white web to those outer tail feathers. The tail, rather than being the same color as the wings and the back, is darker. They tend to be like a darker brown or gray color, and the tail is really a true black. The head of Western Kingbird is sort of a frosty gray color that has significantly less contrast between the throat and the breast and the face. The bill is on average smaller and more slender than other kingbirds, and then of course they sound different. But we will go there soon. So Kingbird number 2 in the photo quiz was a Western Kingbird. The tail is sort of visible in this one. A little bit of white on the outer tail feathers visible here, but mostly looking at this really.
Are you ready?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Throw up the poll.
Okay, there you go.
And yeah, most people who were doing this got this right. Got some slashes in there. All right, yeah, cool. Most people are getting this as Western Kingbird. Little spiky bill, yeah, frosty gray head. Western Kingbird, and then I had one more Western Kingbird in this. In the photo quiz. This Kingbird number 6 is also a Western Kingbird, and you can throw up the poll anytime.
There we go.
So, this was all over the place. Cool, I like it. But a lot of yellow-bellied Kingbird spa. That was the one that got the most votes. So, yeah, excellent work. So this is both birds are in shadow, and I kind of wanted to see. I wanted to see how many people would put Kingbird spa on this. This is the bird on the right is sitting on a nest, and you can see a little bit of its very black tail with a little bit of white on it, but and a real pale looking head. But it's I sort of threw this up to see what I could shake loose from the audience. I would expect a Cassin's Kingbird in a similar light, similar posture to show to just look a lot more uniform, dark on the head and tail, rather than showing any contrast there. And then presumably its white mailer would have really stuck out. So that all said, I'm going to move on to some comparisons. When Cassin's Kingbird and Western Kingbird are in a field guide, or they're seen perfectly or photographed perfectly by good photographers, they're not too difficult to identify. The field marks are really nicely on display in these two photos. The white mailer contrasting with the dark head, the frosty gray head here, these white outer webs on the outer tail feathers, and very, very black tail, whereas you sort of have a brownish, dark gray tail with pale tips in the Cassin's Kingbird here. So this is the way, of course, we always want to see our birds, but it just doesn't always work out that way. Or likewise from the back. You can see the pale tips on the Cassins on the left and the Western on the right, or pale tips on the Cassin's Kingbird, and on the Western on the right, the whiter outer webs to the tail feathers. Again, white mailer showing up nicely in the Cassin's Kingbird. But they're pretty variable. So here we have some Western Kingbird throats at different light conditions, and I guess different ages too. There's a young juvenile Western Kingbird in the top right, chowing down on a blue-eyed darner. And it does actually look like it has kind of a white mailer here, contrasting with a dark head, but also has this fleshy based bill, pretty distinctive and indicative of a young bird. I'll show its tail in one of the other slides, but other Western Kingbird faces showing frosty gray plumage and not a whole lot of contrast. This one on the right looks particularly small-billed too, but that isn't always apparent. So some realistic Cassin's Kingbirds showing bright white malar contrasting with a dark throat. Even in this tiny little fuzzy one sticking its head out of a nest here in the bottom right. Tails of Western Kingbirds. This one at the top left is the tail of the one that was eating the dragonfly, and it's all beat up, but you can still see this bright white outer web of the outer tail feather, which is shown in even when they get worn, they still show this. White here. This one on the bottom right is actually a view from the top. So all of these other are underside of tail. This one on the bottom right is the top of the tail. This one, the photo on in the lower left where it's doing battle with a bullock's oriole, is the bright sun shining through the tail of the kingbird, but you can still see that bright white outer web. So pretty distinctive field mark. Cassin's Kingbirds, the pale tips are, you hope that they're obvious. Sometimes they're not. Like I showed in that one quiz bird, it was they can get all beat up and you can't see that. But for the most part, and in most angles and light conditions, you can get something on that. And that's what's showing here. This one on the bottom left is pretty interesting because the sun is shining through the tail from the other side, and you can see the paler tips, but also looks like it's very pale edge, and also looks very black because of the bright sun blowing up the contrast there. And this one in the middle one on the bottom showing pretty distinctive pale outer webs to the tail feathers, which if you and even the one on the right as well. So if you covered up those tail tips, it could be a little deceptive. You might be thinking you're looking at a Western Kingbird. Next slide, I want to play some sounds. So the calls of, fortunately, Western and Cassin's Kingbirds sound very differently. Cassin's Kingbirds being a resident bird in Southern California and vocal kind of all year round, it's a good one to practice on. They have a very distinctive call, which I'm going to play right now, which you can, if you wanted to tomorrow, you could go out and go to some park with daylight, especially if there's a pond there, or like a big ball field or something like that, some kind of open space with some trees and maybe a little water. You could hear this bird tomorrow morning. So 30 seconds of Cassin's Kingbird calling. Okay, and the song of Cassin's Kingbird, which you're going to hear from, say, territorial birds near a nest or some interacting, sounds like this. Okay, and Western Kingbird is, if you're used to hearing those buzzes of Cassin's Kingbird, Western Kingbird is very squeaky and chirpy in comparison. So. And this one. And all right, so those are the common ones, and the males, both males and females make the songs and calls. Males being more vocal than the females, but they both do it. So those are the two common ones that we have around here. So all right, we get the common ones down, and that's all. That's great, because those are the ones you're much more likely to see. But what happens if we get a rare one? So just to put it in perspective, tropical kingbird, there are a few records every year, fall and winter, in coastal California, particularly in Southern California. That's one. There's, I think there's one in Orange County, San Diego, and LA County right now. So they're around. And in usually in some kind of a wetland sort of environment. Thick-billed kingbird, actually, there's a few of those around right now too. But in total, about 30 records of thick-billed kingbird. Mostly from Southern California, and I believe there might even be a thick-billed kingbird in LA, Orange, and San Diego County right now too. Interestingly, a lot of thick-billed kingbird records are repeats. They come back multiple years in a row, sometimes like 10 years in a row to the same spot. So that's kind of cool. Couch's kingbird, in comparison, is extraordinarily rare, and there's only 2 records, winter records, for the state. One from Orange County in the 90s, and one from just a couple years ago in Tulare County in Central California. So start with tropical kingbird. How would one identify a tropical kingbird from the other ones? It has a long tail, and has a very like long-tailed, short-winged look. The tail has a notch in it, and it's also just all the same color. It doesn't have the contrasting pale tips or outer webs like Western and Cassins do. It's very yellow on the front. The yellow usually goes up right up to the throat without a prominent gray band or olive colored band like in Western and Cassin's kingbird. And then of course it's the voice is important. So kingbird number 3 was a tropical kingbird, and there's not too, and Ron, you could throw up the poll results. There's not too much to go on this bird. Really, the only thing you would be able to go on from this is excellent, lots of yellow-bellied kingbird spuzz. That one won out. It just has a uniformly dark tail. There's if you were, I guess if you thought that this was maybe in some weird light or something and just wasn't showing stuff, that's totally reasonable, because it's not a very good photo. But it does have a uniformly dark tail, so unlikely to be Cassin's or Western kingbird. So I guess let me move on to some pictures of tropical kingbirds. And this is what happens when you get a really good look and a really good photo by really good photographers. This shows some of the marks of tropical kingbird really quite well. There's a notch in the tail. The tail is pretty much the same color as the wings. It does have like a real long, skinny tailed look. There's this fine pale edging that I can see on photos of tropical kingbirds that at least Western kingbirds don't seem to have on the upper side of this, usually visible from the upper side of the tail. Tropical kingbirds, this one on the right doesn't really show it, but this one on the left certainly shows the big long honking bill of a tropical kingbird quite well. And the one on the right shows the yellow of the tropical kingbird running right up to the throat. So of course, perspective really matters. And so mixed with some other things here. So there's a tropical kingbird in the middle, a Western kingbird on the right, and a Cassin's kingbird on the left. So you can see some of these field marks all at once. The shape, the overall shape of the bird with the long tail, a longer tailed look than the Western or the Cassins. The head contrast is a lot more like Western than it is like Cassin's. Doesn't have that real prominently white mailer with a dark head. but the tail color would be comparable to Cassin's Kingbird, in that it's more or less uniformly dark, and doesn't show those really distinctive white outer webs. So that's from the front. Here's one from the back. Same sort of stuff. The bill of tropical kingbird is pretty good sized. This one shows the fine pale edging on these on the top of the tail feathers, which Western kingbird doesn't show. Cassin's does a little bit, but the notch tail, actually this Western shows a bit of a notch tail too, but also has these bright white edges, which tropical and of course Cassin's doesn't have. So that's that. I'm going to move on to Couch's Kingbird because it's very much like tropical kingbird. In fact, it for the first 100-odd years of it being described to ornithology was believed to be a subspecies of tropical kingbird. And it was work in the 60s and 70s. Some toddler mayhem going on behind me. In the 60s and 70s, vocal distinctions were more thoroughly covered and studied, and it was declared a separate species and was added to the AOU list in 1981. So that's just to give an idea of how similar these things are, and basically all of the field marks that Couch's has, if you were to describe what a Couch's kingbird looks like a tropical kingbird. There's some subtlety in the shape of the wing, probably an identification that is just could be used in hand, and that the 10th primary, the furthest feather out on the wing, is shorter than the 5th primary feather, 5th wing feather, so that it gives it a more rounder winged look. But this is a subtle field mark and not reliable for separation in the field. So here's a couple of pictures of Couch's Kingbird. The one on the left is the bird from Orange County in the 1990s, and the one on the right is from its core range in Tamaulipas in Mexico, in East Mexico. So very similar to tropical kingbird. And in fact, on the next slide, I have a tropical kingbird on the left and a Couch's Kingbird on the right. So just this bird on the left has fresher feathers. You can see all the white edges on them, and this bird on the right is very, very worn and beat up looking. So the quality of the feathers are different, but the shape of the bird, I guess one could argue that the bill thickness of the Couch's Kingbird does look a little thicker on the bird on the right. So, but this would be a tough one if you were to go on this photo alone. And this is just to emphasize how similar these things are. Couch's Kingbird on the left and tropical kingbird on the right. Fork tail, the general impression of the bird is pretty similar in shape. This is a tough one. So an extra liminal tropical type kingbird is an identification challenge, but they sound very different. So I'm going to play some calls and songs of tropical and Couch's Kingbirds. So yeah, Couch's Kingbirds make a lot of trill noises. So play some trills. And some of their calls. Very, very high trills. Right, and in comparison, Couch's Kingbird makes a lot of peeps and kind of buzzy rattles, but very different sounds. right, and then okay, that latter one was actually a recording of the Couch's Kingbird that was in California a couple years ago in Tulare County. So relevant. And anyway, so moving along, the last one I'm covering is thick-billed kingbird, which is a yellowish bellied kingbird. It's pretty yellow below in its first fall. And in the fall when these birds are in fresh plumage, they are yellowish, and then they wear into a whiter plumage in the spring. So they do have a big, thick, heavy bill. Their back, wings, and tail are sort of a uniform gray-brown color. They're the most different looking of the kingbirds that I'm covering here. And here's a couple of pictures of them. Just a big, big hunkin' bill. That one on the left is indeed a first fall bird. You can see little rufous edging on the tail feathers, which is indicative of this being a young bird. I don't remember where these were photographed, but here in California, both by Larry Sansoni. So that is basically all of the stuff. And just to kind of conclude on yellow-bellied kingbird identification, is sort of a lot of the same things that we say about identifying any bird. Obviously the one that everybody should know is when and where you are, and always remember that the things that the birds that you're seeing are very likely to be the ones that are supposed to be there. So it's good to know the status and distribution of birds, but then also the common stuff. You know what the common birds around you look like and sound like, and if you have time, find out what the rare ones sound like and look like too, and then you'll recognize something out of range and be able to identify it, and that's pretty satisfying. But for kingbirds specifically, focus your attention on the bill size and shape, the head and throat color, and the color of the tail and pattern of the outer tail feathers. And then sort of in the theme of this identification webinar is don't need to guess. That's what slashes and spuzz are for, and that's always okay. It's always the right answer if you don't know, and especially if you're putting it into eBird, you could always write some notes in there, or put a photo in there or whatever, and you can always come back to it later. And if other people are cruising around there and looking at checklists, you might get your bird identified for you. So the last thing I'm gonna do is go through five more photos, and then we'll do a identification poll right here and see how good I was at talking, and I guess how good you were at listening. So here is Kingbird Alpha.
Do you know any good kingbird jokes, John?
I don't know any jokes.
Oh, okay.
This is serious, Ron.
That explains a lot. Yeah. And we have 4 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, and the end of the poll.
All right. How'd we do?
Do you want me to share the results now?
Yeah, put it up there.
All right. Here we
All
go.
right. Okay, good. Cassin's Kingbird won the day here. Yes, this is a Cassin's Kingbird. I think it's a western fence lizard in its beak. But yeah, you can see the dark gray head and a little trace of the white mailer contrasting with that dark gray head. The tail is almost completely in the shadow, so that one's really hard to see. But I just wanted to. It's a good photo.
All right.
So here is Kingbird Beta.
Kingbird Beta. Here we go. You can move the questions out of the way by grabbing the frame and moving it over. And we have a few more seconds. Get your answers in. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, John.
All right. So this is a tropical kingbird indeed. Although interestingly, when I first saw this picture, this is taken in March in Puerto Vallarta, West Mexico. So in the range of tropical kingbird. When I first saw this photo, I said, "Oh, tropical kingbird." This is one that looks like it kind of has a heavy bill. So if this were an out of range one, this would have been an interesting one to hear call to make sure it wasn't a Couch's kingbird. But yellow in the front, pretty monochromatic, notched tail, big bill. So good tropical kingbird marks.
All right.
All right, here, kingbird gamma is a sound. So let me play this sound for everybody.
And I'll put up the poll.
Right.
And the answers are coming in. And we have a few more seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. End of the poll. You there,
Okay.
John?
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't see the results of. Oh, there they are. Okay, great. Everybody knows their sounds pretty good. So Western kingbird, it was a Western kingbird, and Western kingbird indeed won the poll results. So yeah, good work, folks. Kingbird delta.
Hope that's number 4.
Yep.
And people are going crazy on this one. And a few more seconds. Get your answers in. 4, 3, 2, and 1. And here are the results.
All right, great. So this is an interesting one that was put into eBird as a Cassin / Western kingbird, and it's definitely a really confusing looking bird. It's it's pretty the face is pretty washed out in bright light. So it's hard to say if the contrast that we're seeing between the pale malar and the darker crown and upper face is real or some sort of artifact. And then as well, the tail looks like the tips of the tail of this bird are pretty abraded, so that the pale tips that a Cassin's would show are kind of worn off. And then there's that pale outer web of the tail feather, so it has a lot of Western characteristics. That said, I think it's a Cassin's kingbird. The malar contrasting with the crown looks like it's real, not just an artifact. And the tail feathers, even though they're also in pretty bright light, don't look as black as I would expect with a prominent white outer web. There's also, and it's sometimes distinctive and sometimes not, the darker feathers in the folded wing and the wing coverts here have pretty broad pale edges, and usually that contrast, the darker back of a Cassin's kingbird with paler edges tends to be kind of like a contrasty kind of checkerboardy thing sometimes. And it was another earlier picture that showed that as well. So I think this is a Cassin's kingbird. So I'm glad just about all of you agree with me. So that's good. And then finally, kingbird epsilon.
Okay, there we go. A lot of poll answers coming in.
Well, that's good because we won a lot.
Yeah. And a few more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, let's share these results. Okay.
All right. This was a trick. This was a trick question because this is a snowy-throated kingbird from Southwest Ecuador. I wanted to see where people went with this, and if how many yellow-bellied kingbird spurs this would get. So yeah, there's what it looks like on the other side. So it's pretty different looking thing with a very black and white, black-tailed stuff. So I just wanted to see how we were all doing, but I think everybody did pretty well. Enough yellow.
Pretty tricky.
Yeah, just just doing things like that. So anyway. Yeah, that concludes the presentation. I want to thank everyone who gave me photographs to use, and I want to thank all of the people who donated sounds to Xenocanto, which is where I got all of the sounds that I used in this presentation. So thank you all, and enjoy the slashes. So I'll take any questions if people have any.
Yeah, we actually have a number of questions. John, if you click your Q&A down at the bottom of your screen, you
Okay.
can go through those, or I
Yeah,
can read them
great.
to you, whichever you prefer.
Oh, I'm pretty good at reading. There's the first question says, have kingbirds and I guess it's supposed to be Myarchus flycatchers hybridized? The short answer is not that I know of. I don't know where exactly they sit in the taxonomic tree, how close those genera are to one another. But as far as I've read, I haven't encountered a hybrid. The kingbirds do hybridize within the genus, though, and I know there are records of, in fact, even in California, a western kingbird and a scissor-tailed flycatcher hybridized. In California, that hybrid is known. The second question is, other than thick-billed kingbird, which others have rufous in the tail? And I think the answer to that is none of them. And thick-billed kingbird is only in their first basic plumage. So there's just the young birds in the first fall can have narrow rufous edges on their feathers. Next question is from Lance, wants to know, was the kingbird with the lizard, the Cassin's kingbird at the nest that I mentioned earlier? I'm not sure. From years of working for electrical utility companies, I've seen lots of kingbird nests in lots of towers, and I have lots of pictures of kingbirds sitting on and around towers and at nests in towers, and so I have no idea. Let's see. An anonymous attendee. What do me and other LA eBird reviewers feel about silent tropical couches kingbirds? Okay, to enter as tropical based on probability, or better to enter as a slash? I don't want to answer for the other eBird reviewers, because as an eBird reviewer, I'm certainly the weakest link in that chain. And when I, in the rare occasions when I log on to the eBird review portal and review stuff, it's usually things out in the Antelope Valley. I haven't weighed in on this. I mean, my feeling as a scientist and a birder is, either one of those is okay, because as I mentioned in the presentation, and the questioner mentioned, is that the probability of a tropical kingbird is significantly higher than a Couch's kingbird. So that's fine. Nancy Salem says, is this a feature to help a greenback on a tropical kingbird? Yes, they do. I didn't bring that up because that was a thing that, and it was visible in a lot of my photographs, that the greenback is only visible in certain lights, and sometimes sometimes a western kingbird looks like it has a green back, and sometimes a Cassin's kingbird has a green back. even a tropical kingbird doesn't seem to have a very, very prominent, flashy green back, and only in certain lights do I find that useful. I suppose that would be just a field mark to add to it once you've already seen the other field marks. And then Lily Yeska says, how close are kingbirds related to ash-throated flycatchers? They are in different genera. Kingbirds are Tyrannus and ash-throated flycatchers in Myarchus, and I just don't know how close those genera are taxonomically. They do have some similar characteristics. Ash-throated flycatchers are yellow on the belly as well, as are the other Myarchus flycatchers. So they are similar in appearance. They're both flycatchers. I honestly don't know how close those genera are related. All right, well, did I get all of them, or there's some more floating around out there?
I think you got them all for now. Oh. Yeah, if you would mind stopping your share, we can get
Okay.
everyone back up on the screen.
All right. Great.
And if you have a last-minute question, please pop it in. Otherwise, I'd like to thank John Feenstra, Dr. John Feenstra, for helping us out and making us feel much more comfortable about yellow-bellied kingbirds. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, now we want us to
one
be
more
yellow-bellied
question.
when we're trying to identify the kingbirds. We could be more confident, not as yellow-bellied.
Or not as yellow-bellied. Oh, jeez. So, John, how many yellow-bellied kingbirds are on your yard list?
Just one. Western flyover.
Real? You've never had a Cassins up there?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope, that's the number one nemesis yardbird, probably.
Wow. Wow.
Had him on the street, just not from the yard.
Well, it's getting close. Okay, I haven't seen any other questions pop up, so thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Our next, be sure and catch our next webinar on the second Tuesday in March. Yeah, we're March. And we will see you then. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
All right.